Thanks for inviting me. Actually, there are two species which do not gel very well, which is agriculture economists and macroeconomists. So macroeconomists do not know anything in agriculture, and agriculture economists never dare to know macro. So it's really intimidating to give a talk in NIPFP where we have all macroeconomists around. But the saving grace is that I'm not an agriculture economist. So that's so. What is, this is a joint work, I should rather say, a joint work in progress with Raj and Rajchandra and Dr. P.K. Joshi. So what happened is we had just recently got interested in this because, when we deal with agriculture, I think or at least the prior belief is, agriculture economists spend their lifetime trying to raise yields and productivity, and the most ignored area in agriculture economics is the market, and more so when you get into developing countries. Right? It's about the market. There means how do you subsidize fertilizers, how do you subsidize seeds, right? But the real market in action, where there's price discovery, there is bargaining, there's all the things that the way markets work. So that's why when NAM came in, which is National Agriculture Market, the idea, we got really interested in it. So what I'm going to do in today's talk is, first of all, just come from a very economist perspective. And it's a very odd way to start this talk, from the point of view that we are actually starting the talk by saying what cannot be done. I mean, from a research perspective. I mean, it is very, because you work at an IPFP, you must have faced the same kind of issue when you're trying to deal with GST, right? There is an absolute lack of data, right? You're a big country, 1.2 billion people or what, and still you do not have data on how much of trade flows from one state to other, right? And I think we have kind of, regressed in terms of data. When the British were there, they had a much better data of what was moving from one place to another within the country, right? So, but I'll just use the secondary evidence to show, from the agriculture market perspective, that the gains, the welfare gains from market integration are quite significant, right? And most of the studies actually show, because I started by saying that agriculture economists always worry about productivity, yields and so on. And it's very strange that most of these papers will show, and they will say in the conclusion, that our estimates of welfare gains from market integration of agriculture markets are higher than that from productivity growth. And there's a reason behind it, because that's what agriculture economists always worry about. So in India, since we don't have the data now, but Donaldson and all, they did the study earlier, which was about I don't know how many of you came across the paper called Railroad and the Raj, which is in AER in 2015. That paper actually is about, in some way, agriculture market integration, because that deals with agriculture products, and when the advent of railways, what happens to the welfare gains. Okay, so NAM, when I started on this, very recently actually, that's why I said it's work in progress, so your comments and all will be very helpful. So I just started thinking of NAM as a step towards that market integration, right? And I've now kind of, downsized myself and to say that is basically trying to wish for the moon. There is much more that NAM would be doing, and that's what we should focus on. The market integration is like probably the next second step, third step, and so on. But still, I'm saying, and there are a lot of other things in which NAM can have first order effects. But as we have been talking before the talk, but needs a lot of changes at the back end. So, and this is still, we are talking about a common market. If you remember the EU setup, right? That's a single market, right? We are not even aiming for a single market. This is just a stepping stone towards that in some way. We are still just hoping for a common market, if at all, right? So so I know this might be very repetitive, but most of you would know what NAM is, right? A National Agriculture Market, what has been proposed, right? It's an electronic portal that has been proposed. In some way, for the bureaucrats in the north-south, whichever block, right? they, at the back of their mind, they had something of an Amazon, Flipkart model in their mind. I mean, it's not said as that, but if you look at this, that you can even think of one eBay model, if at all, right? Because you're putting your bids, and so it some ways structured like a virtual marketplace, right? Where people can put their bids from anywhere in the country, and then you can supply the good. So, but you begin to see that there are two things. One is actually the virtual marketplace. You can put your bid, but then goods have to travel. Goods have to have certain attributes to reach. I mean, you order 10 kg of mangoes, and the guy sends you 5 kgs. I mean, there has to be some authority, some system that will take care of it, right? So when you think about Amazon, Flipkart model, they have the backend which is set up like that, right? But so that's the issue that we are going to face in this. So this is the point, that in the conceptualized model, the nodal point is in the backend is what? They are the existing mandis, right? The wholesale market that are there. They are supposed to take care of all this backend stuff, right? And that's where we are going to see where is the lacunae. Okay. So what does the common market mean? It means for agriculture products that there should be no institutional or legal barriers to the circulation of products. Producers or sellers, traders can sell the same freedom across the state borders as they can within their own state, and that's where you begin to see the hurdles there, right? Because agriculture is and agriculture marketing itself would be a state subject, right? So you begin to see that, and so I was saying that just in an odd way just to start, but we really want to start talk by saying that the potential gains from, and we'll scale it down definitely. We are not really hoping for the moon that we get to the national market integration, but the gains are substantial. I mean, and I think the agriculture economists have kind of consciously or subconsciously always downplayed the importance of markets, right? And more so in developing countries. I mean, so Donaldson and all, Consinot, and they wrote this paper about this 100 years of data that they used on the county level in the US for agriculture market integration. And they also showed that even in the US case, the gains were more than the gains from productivity growth. And remember, the US had a huge productivity growth in agriculture after 1930s and 40s, right? And after 70s, with a lot hybrid maize and everything, there was a huge amount of growth. Still, you'd find the gains from market integration were higher. In India, it is being done indirectly, which is through Donaldson paper that was saying the railroad, and we're looking at, so there the estimates are about 16% increase in agriculture income, right? Which to us is like substantial, that if you get agriculture market integration, which you're taking as the advent of railways, it's a structural estimation. They have a Ricardian kind of model, Eaton Khartoum setup, which is we do in trade, and so their estimate is about 16% increase in income, which we think is quite substantial, right? So these are the things that I'm just going to, right? And these are all structural estimation. We are not going to get into details of this. So this is the paper that we are talking about. So that's what I was saying. It was 16% is the estimate, right? Which is substantial. Okay. Now, and the other thing that we're saying that if you want to do it, all this kind of analysis now, you just don't have the data. This data the British were recording, and you see how extensive was the data. The data was about 93% of the cropped area was covered in this data, right? For the agriculture output, 17 principal crops. What was moving from where to where, right? At what prices, right? And retail prices of these 70 crops in different regions, right? Now try finding the retail prices for every commodity and usable data in India. It's one heck of a job, right? So this is so. Now one of the things which I thought that it's a phenomenal paper what Donaldson did, which I think is one important thing which they did not do, is basically he just looks at agriculture income. From our perspective, given that what is happening on farm distress and all, we also think agriculture market integration has a big role into play in the volatility of income, right? because when the droughts happen, it does not affect only the supply, it also affects the demand, the local demand. If you're confined to the local market, it has a real big income shock, right? And absolutely no study has looked at this effect of, even this paper did not look at the effect of market integration on the volatility of income, right? That's another thing that one should do, even if if the NAM as proposed succeeds and it really plays the role of market integration, that's what it will do. So I might be repeating this because most of the people know here agriculture markets in India are regulated under the Agriculture Producing Marketing Committee Act, which is APMC, right? Old act, I mean it says 1952, but British had some things like this in pre-independence period also. They did not used to call it APMC, but they used to be there, some cotton order and whatever. So they had a lot of these things. And we have been very loyal, colonies. Whatever British had, we just followed them, right? So with a different name, collector became a DM or whatever, right? And so then what you do is state is now, every state, it's a state subject, but then divided into different areas and it's all going to be administered by a separate APMC. So there are all these APMC areas. And so that's where the state is geographically divided. Now where comes the elephant in the room, right? The farmers have to sell their produce through the auction at the mandi to which they are assigned, right? So every APMC has an area around it, a circumference in which the farmer has to sell. So that you can begin to see what it does to market integration, right? Now, another entry barrier. Now, to operate in a mandi, you need a license. You are a commission agent, you are a trader, you need a license, right? Now license is not as easy as getting a driving license in India. It's a very, very difficult license because you need to have some real estate in the mandi, right? Because if you are a commission agent, you are supposed to store the good, you have to keep it under rain and so on. So you need to have a real estate, one entry barrier, right? So, and at the end of it, any buyer, if the APMC rule is in place, cannot buy directly from farmer, right? They have to come through this government regulated market, right? And they're going to the area, the farmer is going to sell in the area. So what are the research questions that we're going to address into this background? So first we said we'll start from a very economist perspective. So how far do the indicators suggest a basis for NAM? There, the basic idea, we are doing a very simple time series exercise to say, if you want to, be a proponent of market integration through NAM, the first question that you want to see, are the markets integrated or not integrated in the first place, right? So that's what we are treating as a basis for NAM, right? Now, the second question, which is the most important, that for NAM to work, what are the elements on the back end, right? Because remember when you said that it's not that you can just put a bid on there, go to the portal and say, I want to buy 500 kgs of rice of this grade and so on. There's a lot of things on the back end because there has to be weighing, there has to be grading, there has to be packing, there has to be stored, there has to be transport, right? There's a lot of things on the back end that are needed, right? Now, then and this is a very difficult thing to do because what we get from those agmarket.nic.in, that kind of data, I don't know, Government of India has this fascination for PDF. I don't know why, for what reason. They want to put everything in PDF, and then once you get this data from PDF, you have to write a macro in Excel or something to extract this and this data. So whatever, then we look at all that data, trying to get some measure of what is the state of backend in terms of all the attributes, in terms of storage capacity, in terms of weighing capacity and so on. Then what all would be needed for NAM to work? So that's the question. So, and these questions, as we said, are pertinent because the nodal point on the back end are basically nothing but these mandis. These are the wholesale markets. And then there are these rules and regulations that could militate against the working of NAM, right? So these are, I'm not going to get into this, these are the standard problem that everybody knows, the existing market that you have under these APMCs, which are this, the problems there, which we want to probably hopefully correct through NAM. So now one of the things that we, I don't know how many, some of you have worked on the mandi, but we have a lot of field work. We get to, I have an occupational hazard when I go to mandi because I also work on food safety, that's my area. When I go there, then it's very difficult to eat after that. But the point is that, if you go and just spend a day in a mandi, it's kind of a huge learning exercise, right? Then you begin to realize that how complex agriculture markets in India. So I'm just trying to, we say all this, but you have to actually see the market functioning, how it works, right? So, and that's why I put this. There's a lot of, if you are kind of as an economist, if you observe, they're almost like blatant cartelization, there's collusion, which nobody sees, but anybody can see if you really were a keen observer, right? And so we have seen it all the time. So if you go to any regulated market, right, you have to operate through, you're a farmer, you have to get into the market through a commission agent, right? And then there'll be traders who would be, and this is an observation that if you just spend a day there, you'll find all the time there'll be 2-3 large traders, right, with 40-50% of the purchases, right, who will really corner the market. And you can see with the collusion, because the commission agent, they will make lots, and then the bidding will take place on the lots, right? And we have seen it time and time again. They will be bidding on one lot, then the other big traders will not bid on the other lot, and then so this is like explicit collusion. You have not seen nothing. It's like naked eye, you can just see it, right? The government doesn't see it, but anybody can see it, right? So that's why I'm saying that if you're not hoping for the moon in terms of market integration, but there are all these things which are at the margin, which are very, very important for the functioning of the market, which is in terms of what are the options for the farmers and all, where NAM could be quite effective if we get the back end right. Okay, and some markets, we have been to where no auction takes place because the government can procure everything at the MSP, so there is no auction issues there, and especially in states where procurement takes place like Punjab, Haryana, Western UP, Andhra Pradesh, and so on, right? So in principle, since the commission agent's commission is based on the value at which the transaction takes place, he should have an incentive to raise it, right? But many a times you would also find, I don't know, some of you might have observed if you were in the market, that sometimes the commission agent is also the trader. So they are the same entity. I mean, so I was looking at it in terms of the legal side of it. Legally it's allowed. I thought that they were kind of gaming the system by bribing someone or something. And I went to the legal notes for it. Legally it's allowed that you could be a trader as well as a commission agent, the same entity. So now you can imagine how much of a good price they can get to the farmer, right? With the commission agent, you're also the trader.
So he can conduct the auction and sell it to himself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And more to it, some farmers are also commission agents.
So all these things it's a pretty much a la land if you go there to a agriculture market and see this. And so the method is an open ascending auction. You keep on raising the price, right, till the time gets over and you stop. And it's basically that it all takes place there, physically that you have to be present, and then the bidding goes on, and that you see will change with NAM, right? So everything is there. Now you can bid from anywhere outside also, right? And some of you have studied the Karnataka model, that was the e-auction model, that people can bid from outside, and so that actually could change the equation quite a bit, right? Now it's not all the collusion that they can collude physically there, right? That they say, I will not bid on this lot, you don't bid on that lot. So all these traders, this is pretty common that they do, right? But if somebody from outside can bid on it, right? So then, and you don't even know who's bidding, right? So that information bid that is there, and that would change. Okay, and this is the paper that you see in, I think it's the JD one or the American Journal of Agricultural Economics paper, which my teachers from Delhi School who wrote. They looked at this collusion. I mean, they have a structural estimation of the auctions, and they would try to show the collusion in rice as well as in wheat markets. And everywhere there is the same story. The 3-4 traders who are large, they always will not bid on others' end, and then they'll just bid on certain lots, and this goes on. And they have actually estimated quite a bit of evidence of down pricing that they get from collusion in these markets. So these are the things that we'll really, okay. And this, so these are all the. So now, if you go to the, and this is where the things are. You at one level you would see that people who can collude there, who can do all this, but there are outside people who can bid. That could weaken their power, right? So that in principle, and there is this, the motivation for NAM in some way comes from the Karnataka model, right? And I say that there are limits to that extension because Karnataka is even within a state, right? And NAM is going to be proposed across states. That makes a lot of difference. But at the same time, on one essential principle, once you get people bidding from outside, right? Then it can weaken this kind of power that people have in bargaining, because there you can collude, but somebody from outside can do it, right? But at the same time, once you get these people to bid from outside, then you get into these back end issues, right? Because now somebody is going from outside, he doesn't even, most of the time, doesn't have the privilege of physically examining the lot, because when these things happen in the market, there is a physical examination of the lot, and then the bidding takes place, right? Somebody who bids from outside, he would need what? A grade or a certification to say that this is a grade A quality rice, this is a grade B quality rice. He doesn't even know whether it's basmati rice, because now basmati happens to come to a lot of transaction happens in this wholesale market. Previously it didn't used to happen, right? But if you go to Punjab and all, there is no contract farming in basmati now, because most of them come to the mandi where the transaction takes place. It has become very commonplace, right? Now, if I sit in Indore and I bid for basmati rice from a mandi in Punjab, I need to know whether they send me the basmati rice or they send me some other rice, right? They send me the parboiled variety of the common rice. So this is where the thing that, at one side this external bidding from far is really helpful in some ways, a lot of ways, but the other side that it also creates demands on the back end, right? That we need all these things to be, and the back end needs to be ready for it, right? And what we do in whatever this preliminary research that we are engaged into, that we look at from those grand PDF files, we actually generate those things of what is the state of the infrastructure institutions on the back end who can provide all these services that this thing can work, right? Long distance from far off places, and NAM, that is very important, right? So first of all, before even getting into the infrastructure, right, just look at what is the density of market, right? I mean, anybody can guess what is, one market per how many people do we have? Agriculture market, right? It's the density is about 0.2 million people, you get one market, right? So the market density is strikingly small, right? So you want all these things to happen, and you want the market to expand. It is now, it is thin, you want it to expand. You want all the farmers to come and start doing this to this mandi. It's strikingly small. The other thing is the age of the market. The markets in India, agriculture markets, are really old. So there's a huge path dependence. So the markets that started during Green Revolution period in Punjab, Haryana and all those places, they are the markets. I mean, very few new markets have come in. And let me tell you that, there was so much of hue and cry on FDI in retail, right? But the FDI policy in wholesale markets right, is very, very lenient. It is as lenient as it can get. If you are an NRI, you can get 100% ownership immediately. If you are non-NRI, you get 51% immediately, right? And there are lots of tax concessions and all. If you want to get into this, still nothing has come up, right? So there is a big kind of gap there. The government regulated markets, right, which are there, which are very old, so very few new markets have come in, right? And then the second bit is that, first of all, the markets are very few and they are very old, so new markets haven't come up for many, many years. So, and then the other two things is that, when you're going towards NAM, then you have to take into account the fact that APMC would be in place at some positions. So you'll have to think about, and that's what NAM does. It asks for 3 preconditions before the states get to join, right? And we will come to that. Now, so leave aside this thing. Everybody knows that agriculture is a state subject and APMC is all this. That's kind of a hackneyed point. But there are these other technicalities, because APMC Act covers a wide array of commodities. In Maharashtra, if you go to even pisciculture is covered under APMC, right? If you have to do the fisheries, that will be also under APMC. Now, and there is this Mr. Know-all from somewhere who knows about fruits, vegetables, cereals, and so that kind of a thing that you will find the APMCs, they're supposed to cover this wide array of commodities. And if you were following the news, when the NAM was announced that it will be effective on 14th April of this year, and we'll come to that, what commodities, what markets are covered, and then you'll begin to see that how conservative they have been. UP has signed into this NAM portal with 5 markets. All 5 markets will deal with wheat, nothing else, right? The most interesting is, I think, which state, which has signed in with only flowers, nothing else, right? Not Sikkim, it's Goa, because Sikkim hasn't signed on. So I will come to which one. I'm just trying to recall which one is, but they have just signed into this portal only with flour, no other commodity, right? So that's what you begin to see the bite of the back end, right, to do all this. And I always hope that flour would have a lot of grading issues, but some say it doesn't seem, because maybe they're not making perfumes or something, they're just making garlands. So this is what we think is another thing, that commodities have diverse marketing requirements. And one thing that you have read in newspapers, leave aside anything at the general level, none of the perishables have been put in the pilot, right? So that's your first thing, that which always tells you that how important is the back end, right? So the cold storage or whatever is just not there. So that's why there's no of the perishables, right? And so we just map out, for what we are talking, we map out the wholesale markets. So what we'll show is that markets that are there in the back end, they're severely, I'll use the word severely, lacking in terms of the credentials to support an initiative like NAM, right? So either you decide to be on an eternal pilot, so that only you do like non-perishables, homogeneous commodities, right? 1 or 2 commodities every market. Or if you want to really get into the full NAM, which is supposed to be post-pilot, you really need to buckle up, right, on the back end. So that's something which, right? Now, some of this, because it's an IPFP, I think one of the issues that people would always worry is about, because you must be grappling with these issues in GST, what states would have in terms of their revenues, right? Sometimes a lot of issues come up. I don't even think that the mandi taxes contribute such a huge amount to the exchequer, right? But there are people who really want to talk about it, right? But leave aside that, one of the things that one, unless you believe in Laffer curve and things like that, what is going to happen with these mandi taxes is that even if you raise it, and if NAM works, right, and if Karnataka, copra is an example, right? And copra, remember, I mean, I didn't even know what copra is. Copra is kind of coconut which you use for extracting oil and other stuff. It doesn't have a lot of grades or anything. So in Karnataka model, the copra thing works pretty fine and very well. And there's a expansion in the market arrivals. There's a huge market expansion. So even if you want to see that, you just simple back of the envelope calculation. If this thing works, and even if you keep the mandi taxes same, or even if you reduce it, you could have increased your revenue. But the crux is that whether this thing is going to work. And we are going to argue that it's going to only work in homogeneous commodity, non-perishables, with this backend that we have. Okay. Now these are the other technical requirements, because you will be looking at these issues, and these are the kind of criteria these are kind of entry criteria into NAM, right? So within a state, NAM requires that there should be a single license for trading, which is not the case from before on, right? That each APMC, you will have a specific license to trade. NAM requires that once you get a license at least for a state, there should be a single license. It also requires there should be a single fee, right? It's not that you can have one fee and then you say that I access the portal and which falls in this APMC area, then I have to pay a fee again, right? So these are the preconditions. If you don't do this, you don't qualify to enter, right? Okay, and this we said, this might discuss in the question answer session, but it all came from the Karnataka model, right? So this we are not going to go in this, but and what is the finance side of it in the setup deal, as we are calling it, right? So what are the, because you are dealing with the world of GST, there is a lot of sharing of costs, revenues and all these things. What is the share of expenditure deal in NAM, right? The share and expenditure deal is that the government will provide money for the platform, right? And it will give you like 30 lakh rupees per mandi, right? Now everything else that we are talking about, if you want to do grading, you are weighing, public announcement system, whatever you want to do, that's your baby to take care of, right? So there you will get into this fiscal cliff all straight away, right? Because the government is going to the central government, the federal government is going to only provide a very, I would say rather a small portion of it, right? And if you want this to work, a lot of things are there on the back end that need to be done, for which states have to take the hit, okay? So where have been from the pilot basis, they have launched it in 21 mandis across 8 states, right? But what is left there? Fruit and vegetables. I mean, I work a lot on high value agriculture, and I do not see that why there is such a requirement for NAM for wheat and rice, right? What is UP doing with all markets, signing into NAM portal with wheat, right? I mean, if the government is procuring, most of the time there is no question. I mean, farmer will just, MSP becomes like the price, right, at which the transaction will take place.
But the government is not procuring, right, from UP, Bihar, like it's hardly anything compared to Punjab or Haryana.
So, but now,
10%, that's
but,
probably.
but it's a,
That's
in,
my hypothesis, but I could be wrong.
no, I mean, like if you go to Bihar, through the packs, actually the government is procuring rice, not wheat.
15-20%.
Yeah, but I'm saying that whatever is the price, anybody who is bidding, right, would be tied to that price, right? As long as even the 5% is there, right, that becomes the anchor price, right? So
Hopefully it would translate, but what we've seen, it doesn't translate.
it doesn't translate, right?
Yeah.
So that, because it's, this has become the collusive price. It's a bit like the reference pricing that happens in the US in drugs. When the government announces a reference pricing in pharmaceuticals, and you see the actual prices that happen in pharmaceutical markets, everything is around the reference pricing, right? Same thing happens with traders regarding their price with respect to MSP. Now, this is, if there was no MSP, there will be like a prisoner's dilemma, what to offer, right? Now this solves the coordination problem. Everybody anchors on this MSP, and everybody says MSP 300 rupees quintal less than MSP, right? So that, and whenever we are in the field, we go to Odisha, they'll say 300 rupees per quintal less than MSP. Bihar 400 rupees per quintal less than MSP. I says, where did this thing come from around MSP? You're not even, there's no procurement, right? So this is basically, it's kind of a game theoretic thing that's happening. They're solving the coordination problem, otherwise they'll be in a prisoner's dilemma. So the government is actually, by doing this announcement of MSP and not procuring, is kind of harming the farm gate price to the farmers, because the traders are now collude on that price, because it solves the coordination problem. So this is what I'm saying, that if I work from outside, I really want to see it in where this whole issue is, fruits, vegetables, right? Onion prices spike and there's a whole lot of money hue and cry. Cereals, the government has no political appetite to allow the prices to rise. I mean, within weeks when the prices rose, the government imported 6 million tons of wheat from Australia, right? So where it is needed, it is not there, right? That's the idea in NAM. So perishables are out of frame. Volatility in prices where there is the issue will continue. So, and the farmers would not be getting better price, because this is where it is really mostly needed. It is not there. That's what we're trying to make the point. Okay, and so now before you enter NAM, so you need, these are the kind of entry cutoffs in some way. You have to ensure a single license for trading to be valid across the state, single point levy of market fee, and now look at state like Bihar and Kerala. They abandoned the APMC. Bihar abandoned it in 2006. I don't know why, because no other market came up. So it's like you abandoned the APMC, but no private markets came up. So, but whatever is it now, since there is no APMC, there is no about amendment in the APMC Act, you will have to legislate new and say for an online transaction, right? That's a new legislation has to come for online transaction in states like Bihar. Okay, so that's why I'm saying that state like Kerala and Bihar, where there is no APMC now, new laws might still be needed for online trading, right? Okay, so I'm not going to the inputs. Okay, and these things are okay. The Mandi tax is fine. Now we just said that from an economist perspective, we want to argue that NAM makes a lot of sense, right, if it is done, because there is real lack of spatial integration in Indian agriculture markets, right? So you just take the standard stuff that people do for looking at this market integration. The standard core periphery approach, that you take core markets and all the markets on the periphery, and you see whether there is a co-movement in prices or not, right? So this data we actually bought at a daily frequency from all the mandis, some core mandis, which are core mandis based on the market arrivals, which are very high market arrivals for different commodities, and all the periphery markets, right? And we wanted to see which is the standard time series technique that you see the co-integration, right? Whether these things, there is co-movement, right? Whether they move together or not. So, and what you really find is this, that except for some cereals, and that too homogeneous ones, right, which is wheat, not even rice, right, the markets are just not integrated. So onions, no way, right? And I'll show you the pictures for onions, and these are all the core and periphery market that we based on market arrivals. And you just time period, this is daily data that we collect from mandis. We have bought from AgriWatch and from some state. These are the price differentials. This, you look at the price differences between Delhi, Lucknow, Patna. This, just see how these are not prices; these are price differences. Yeah.
Can you go to the previous slide?
Okay.
Agra and Bardhaman core and periphery.
These are based on market arrivals, right? So that's what I'm saying, that if you not all markets are proximate, right? We also have, that's why I'll show you this one, which are like kind of proximate markets, but we also do this which are Delhi and South India market, which are really far off, right? So geographically they are not proximate, but market arrivals, we are using that to define core and periphery, right? And we have also done this, which is not presented here, I should have got that, which is also based on your harvests, right, which are you're near to the harvest. Yeah.
Market arrival, you mean volume or?
Volume, right, in terms of tons, how much tonnage that you get. And there's also that core we have defined, which are based on the harvest area, like Nasik will become for onions, right, which I should have got that picture also. And yeah.
But I mean, if volumes are similar,
Hmm.
but we know, for example, it's almost impossible to substitute from Agra to Bardhaman. We would expect those markets to widely differentiate out anyway.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what we also have geographical proximity, right? So this is, the one I should have presented all the kinds of core periphery that we created. So there are three types of ones which created. One is the geographical proximity, and based on market arrival, we say this is core, and everything surrounding it become periphery, and the one with the highest market arrival in that area becomes core. The other is overall market arrival, that you look at the national market, that becomes core and periphery. I mean, we wrote that thing from the perspective of NAM because it's supposed to be core periphery for the nation as a whole, right? And the third bit, what we do is that, where we have the harvest data, the production data, I mean, which we don't have it very well at that frequency. So we are just plotting those. There are no tests for it, which is based on the harvest, because harvests are only, annual, you get the data. And big harvest areas become like core, and then everything around become periphery, right? So these are the three ways. Any way you look at it, right, you would find that, the price differences are quite large and persistent, right? So that's the idea. I mean, this is what the tests of co-integration also, that what we were showing. We haven't done this thing, but this, so the only where we find the evidence that we get, even rice's markets are not integrated. Either way you look at core periphery. Soybean, there is some evidence of co-integration, soybean markets. Maize is very limited evidence of co-integration, and everything else that don't find any evidence of integration. So that's like just an a priori basis for it, saying that what market integration is not there, so you could hope for a system or strive for a system that can bring in this kind of market integration, right? So there will be limited price transmission and so on. Okay. Now in the back end, there are a lot of issues that the one issue is just the amount of taxes that are there in the market. These taxes also, they are not uniform, they are vastly different. If you look at just the percentage of MSP, it's just 0.8% in Gujarat, whatever is the announced MSP, right? And up to, this is Haryana, 11.5%. This is Madhya Pradesh, 9.2%. Punjab, 14.5%. And the king Uttar Pradesh is 16.71%, right? So there is vast differences in the taxes also there. If you look at market density, look at places like UP and all, 0.2 million people, right, for one market, right? And that's why I said there's a lot of path dependence. If you look at places like Punjab and Haryana, these were the initial northwest areas of Green Revolution, you will find like 49,000 people for one market. Right? So the market density is much better here, but otherwise you want to use the back end in terms of mandi, the places which are really 200 million, the Brazil is there, which is UP, Mexico is there, which is Bihar, right? And there is absolutely no markets, and that's in 0.2 million people you will get one market, right? So we just now said what are the state of infrastructure in this, and we deliberately, just because it's a presentation, in the work that we're doing, we have done it across many indicators. We just took the most basic indicators, right? This is about which we were talking earlier, so I'll just move there. So this is with respect to cultivators. Even if you don't take the overall population, you take the total number of cultivators, right? That also you'll find. So you see the density is very. Now look at basic India, and we just did not took like grading system and all, where the entire map would be like blank, right? Which is all required under NAM. I'm looking at basic systems like public information system, where you make announcements and all, Right? Just look at the spread of those facilities and the wholesale markets, right? Low is the lighter shades, right? Most of the areas are like that. I mean, we could use the actual numbers, but this low means very low, right?
Sorry, a clarification. When you say public information, it is like SMI.
No, I think these are the public information system where you have display boards or public information system where you make announcements and all those things, right? So these are what we calling public information system. That's how this Act cooperative data registers it, right? But price notice board, right? Anything that is, here what happens in, if you take the Karnataka model, so whatever bidding happens on that electronic portal, then it gets on that board and then you say this is the highest bidder and everybody, all the bids are there, right? But right now the simple, okay. The price notice board, you just have a very, very thin density. And these are, I'm saying just, so the story of infrastructure is that, just to put it simply, NAM would require a lot of upgradation on this front if it has to work, right? Especially, since I work on food safety, you give me mangoes to eat, I'll never eat, right? Because I go to Mandi and I see when the carbide is being rubbed on it, right? And then it just, this is totally off the topic, but for, just because I work on food safety. So when you buy mangoes, please look for wrinkles, okay? Because those mangoes which have wrinkles are less likely to have carbide on them for ripening, okay? Because that's natural ripening. So, there are side benefits of this talk, but anyway. And so if I'm ordered a box of mangoes and it comes to me, I need some kind of quality gradation certification, unless I don't know what they have done to those mangoes, right? And there are no grading facilities. I should have also put there's no certification, is absolutely, the whole map is blank. There are no certification authority in any of those mandis, right? And tomorrow I order a box of mangoes sitting far off, right, for this portal to come. Right now mangoes are not there because perishables are not there. But how will that work, God knows, right? So we are just looking at the infrastructure of mandis, and these are just simple regressions. All things that you'll see that there are huge amount of state fixed effects. All the Punjab, Haryana initial ones, even though they are old, they have a comparatively good infrastructure than this one. Okay, now I'm just moving towards conclusion. I'll just take 4-5 minutes, okay? So we want to do this, but whenever I talk with Arvind Subramaniam, and I always say that he talks about GST and all, I always tell him that you have the tax data, that at least for formal trade, what's happening across state, at least do some estimation of how much is flowing between states, right? And I haven't worked on GST, but I want to really know that this figure of how the 2% increase in GDP will come from GST, right? I really want to see what's the research behind it, right? If not, that we will come up with some number that 1% agri GDP will go up with NAM, right? Because if that's the basis for doing this, but there is a big research gap in data. We just need to I don't have time, but some people have started working on the interface between GST and NAM, right? Because they are similar things. So all these things I'm going to, so this is just where I'll conclude what is the progress for implementation of NAM as of April 2016. As you said, 21 mandis in 8 states, right? So if you now look at this, again, the number of the states proposed the number of mandis to join in the portal. They asked for certain amount of money to be pulled in from the center. What was allocated to them was much less than that, right? So that's why fear of then those are there. And so these are the markets. Now I just want you to focus on the commodities proposed, right? Look at Uttar Pradesh. It's every market that it has proposed to join in NAM is going to deal in wheat, right? And remember, wheat is the most homogeneous of cereals, right? Least issues of grading certification, right? That's what is. In pulses, where there is such an issue, leave aside perishable like onions and all. Pulses we have a huge price spikes, price volatility, price dispersion, everything is there, right? What is there that has been proposed? It is black gram, right? And what's the monster there? Pigeon pea. Not as only, do you see any tur here? It's not there. Black gram, right? And chana was the easiest of pulses to handle in all this, right? So, I mean, somehow everything, if you just look at it, and this is Jharkhand actually, not Goa. Jharkhand has only joined with flowers. I mean, I don't see many flowers in Jharkhand, but that's a different matter. But because I do a lot of field work in Jharkhand, and so these will be more or less we have talked about this. So if we had time, then we could have gone through this. Some of these are constitution related also, so we can do this. Okay.